Dr. Jonathan Tripp making a surprise visit to our studio today. Well, we're not surprised. The two of us have been talking about this for several days. We don't normally see him on a Friday, but this all got started when Benito Baeza was telling me a couple of weeks ago about some of the stories he was reading on the AP wire about something called the Zika virus, which I had heard about a few times. And now we're hearing a lot more about it in media. In fact, if you were listening to Fox News at 8 o'clock here at News Radio 1310 KLIX and newsradio1310.com, there was a story about it. Bill Colley with you as well this morning on Top Story. But, Doctor, first of all, welcome back.
Thank you.
You're getting to the point where we could have you do this every day.
Well,
There's enough to talk about, isn't there?
there's plenty to talk about. Yeah, this is a lot of this is a big deal.
This is not a laughing matter, this
No,
virus.
no, this is a serious day. We had a little bit of fun Wednesday talking about playing the Love Doctor and
Right.
Valentine's, which is all good stuff. But this is true health pandemic and maybe later epidemic problem with the Zika virus. And so today's my purpose is to inform, not to cause hysteria, because I don't think there's a real reason for that. In fact, let me just start out by saying the Zika virus, for most people, if they ever get it, which is transmitted mostly by mosquitoes, if they ever get it, they're never even going to know they had it. So let me just start out that way, and then we'll talk more about why we're really concerned about this. And to say that, oh, it's a disease that's far away, it's over there down south of our borders. The truth is it's already shown up in, I can't remember exactly how many states, but as close to us as Oregon.
I heard 20 yesterday, a figure of 20 at least.
20 different states, that is probably true, but it ranges, from New York to Illinois to Florida. And Florida and Texas are the hardest hit so far. And almost all of those have been um, what they call traveler transmitted. In other words, people were ill because they had just come back from a place where the Zika virus is alive and active. We have one scenario that is confirmed by the CDC, and it's in the Dallas County Health District, that one young lady received it sexually transmitted. So there are other ways to get it, but primarily it is truly a mosquito-borne virus.
Mostly, but of course, and I've also heard even if people who are just kissing through saliva, it potentially could be as well.
There is some risk to that, although they haven't been able to show that that happens at all. But it is definitely, we're learning about this as we go, and much of what we'll talk about are unconfirmed fears. The biggest issue that has got the World Health Organization really going is this threat for pregnant women that get infected with the Zika virus can have a birth defect. At least they're trying to make this connection because it sure looks like it is connected. A birth defect in the child of what's called microcephaly, which means small head. And in fact, if you see pictures, it looks like the child has the top part or back part of the head shrunken down, and it's a brain malformation. It's not just the size of the skull, and it's a lifelong, retardation, mental incapacities for the child. So it's a big deal, and it's not everybody that gets infected, but the predominance of that occurrence of microcephaly is much higher right now, especially in Brazil. It's being monitored, where the biggest part of the outbreak is.
These are and these children become special needs children. I had a coworker many years ago who had a daughter born with that, and the daughter died at 10 years old, but it was a struggle just to keep her until she was 10 years old. And that's, I think, the other big concern is if there's a lot of this going on, the cost of dealing with it is going to be astronomical.
Yeah, that is a big deal. This is this is a kind of a worst case scenario. You have a child that the body from the neck down all looks normal and should function normally, but it doesn't because the brain isn't normal. So it's beyond just saying, special needs child. This is somebody who really won't have any function other than, bodily, functions that are main brainstem type functions. It's,
I was surprised to see that we've known about this virus for about 70 years, but it was confined to a relatively small area in Africa, and then it just suddenly started going on the move. And now that it's in the Americas, it's just rapidly
it's
spreading.
going like crazy. It's spread by a particular mosquito mostly. In fact, in the U.S., we have this mosquito. It's uh, mostly Florida and Texas. They're all along the Gulf states is pretty much where it is. But there's a cousin to this mosquito that goes as far north as the Michigan border and mostly Midwest and Eastern coast states. But we have a little bit of it even in Northern California and Southern Arizona. And that additional mosquito type is the threat for us once spring hits. Because let me kind of back up and tell what the main symptoms of what this virus is.
We could pick that up after the break. We're about 10 seconds away. We do want to mention Dr. Jonathan Tripp in studio with us this morning. We're talking Zika virus and the potential of what it could do. Also, I guess, as you said, you're not here to panic anyone because obviously there's some other things too we've got to keep in mind. There's media hype with all of this as
Yeah,
well.
because it's coming to the U.S. The question is how severe will that outbreak be here?
More coming up with the doctor in just a moment. It's 8:40, 25. Bill Colley with you as well on News Radio 1310 KLIX and newsradio1310.com. Joining us in studio, Dr. Jonathan Tripp from Tripp Family Medicine right here in Twin Falls, Idaho. We've mentioned before on Fillmore Street, directly across from the main post office. And we're having a discussion this morning about the Zika virus. And you were just mentioning before the break, there were some things you wanted to run down about who's affected, transmission, and the like.
Yeah, let me kind of give the basics. The main symptoms, if you have any with the Zika virus, are number one, a fever, number two, joint aches, number three, a rash, and the fourth is what we call conjunctivitis or pink eye. So you have, red eyes, a rash, these joint aches, and a fever. It's not an upper respiratory type illness. So, not to be confused with the flu that has usually lots of cough, congestion, fever, and body aches everywhere. So the only two they'd have in common is the fever and the body aches. But this is something that if you were to have that because you traveled somewhere south of our borders, um, then that's something worth paying attention to because you potentially could be the person bringing it back to the U.S. And then if you get bit by a mosquito here, that mosquito can now transmit it to anybody else. So the CDC, or Centers for Disease Control, have given some guidelines, and the guidelines are number one, if you are traveling to an area that's known to have the Zika virus, then you need to use mosquito repellent. You need to take measures like wearing long sleeves, things like that, to avoid getting it. Uh, and when you come back, they have not given the guideline to use mosquito repellent for the first week or so after you're back, but I could see that coming in April when our weather warms up and our mosquitoes really get going. Um, so that I think would be a good suggestion because what they find is this virus hangs around in your system for about a week. That's about it. There is some indication that it can be transmitted sexually, and so they see it in the saliva, they see it in the semen, and in the semen it hangs around for about 2 weeks. So CDC's guideline right now, because this is new information, goes more extreme than that, and that is sex between a pregnant woman and her partner should be totally barrier protection, so condoms all the way through the pregnancy. They don't want to give any additional risk to this baby that may have really serious, effects.
I suppose you should also abstain too if you come back from a vacation in Jamaica or Puerto Rico for a couple of weeks because of that same threat until the virus would be cleared.
It makes sense. Uh, Absolutely makes sense. I guess the hard part is to say who's going to get pregnant, and that's the mystery. In fact, you have the country of El Salvador making a recommendation that women avoid getting pregnant till 2018. Why 2018? Well, because they're trying to figure out which way is up, along with the World Health Organization. And they're just saying, don't get pregnant. We don't want you to have a kid that has a lifelong tragedy.
That's easier said than done, obviously.
Yeah, no, that's a recommendation that'll be tough to follow. Some other things. Uh, as you consider the idea of travel, and a lot of people will say, oh, I'm just not going to take any risk. If you take pregnancy out of the picture, your risk is relatively low. Yes, you can get the virus, but 80% of people that get it will never know they even had it, so it won't even ruin your vacation. On the other hand, if you get it, you may have a week long of fever and a rash and body aches and some pink eye. that would ruin your vacation, but it's not life-threatening. There is one symptom that they're trying to connect to this, however. It's a syndrome called Guillain-Barré, which is being paralyzed. And it starts usually in the feet with tingling and numbness, and over a couple of days, pretty rapidly creeps its way up your body. And this is the one I would worry about because it happens to if it gets really serious, it can paralyze even your breathing mechanism,
Well,
and you have to be hospitalized and intubated.
Booker Moore, who'd been the great Penn State running back, came down with it, and it ruined his NFL career just as he was getting started for the very same reason. We have a caller with us, Doctor. Telephone number for those who are interested in chiming in today. We're talking about the Zika virus. 736-0300. You're listening to News Radio 1310, KLIX, newsradio1310.com. It's 26 at 848, and you're on the air with Dr. Tripp.
What stage of gestation does the virus cause problems in the microcephalus? I'll hang up and listen.
This is a great question because they don't have the answer yet. I've had thoughts on this myself because I did a lot of obstetrics, and we talk about first, second, or third trimester, and most of the brain formation is happening still during the first and into the second trimester. And after that, it's a growth pattern. So you would think it's first trimester primarily that causes the birth defect, but they don't know. And that's why they're saying protect any pregnant woman through the entire pregnancy. So great question.
And the problem is in an area like El Salvador or Guatemala and all of these really warm tropical climates is that you have mosquitoes all the time. So a pregnant woman, if she doesn't have protection from the mosquitoes, especially like a net or something that she's sleeping in at night, she's in very much at the risk pool.
Yeah, absolutely. In fact, we can go to our local store and buy, a bug spray or a mosquito repellent, which, there are definitely recommendations as to which are better. If you're going to travel, I would say find something that has what's called DEET in it, which is, any Boy Scout that's been stuck with the mosquitoes knows you got to have that or you're going to die or you think you're going to die.
Right. Yeah.
I have a fun experience. I spent a year and a half living in Venezuela and had a mosquito net, and the mosquitoes would make it through, get the blood, and then they couldn't get out because they were fatter. And so every morning I'd wake up with a bunch of mosquito bites and a troop of mosquitoes at the top of my net. So even the nets don't keep them all out.
We have another caller with us. And caller, you're on the air with Dr. Tripp at 850.
Good morning. I'm concerned about the biology of the virus. Is it a DNA virus or an RNA virus? And do they know the point source of that virus? In other words, what its original host was?
Ooh, that's a great question. I do not think they know the original host. The primary, because it can be carried by both animals and humans. So the mosquito is the transporter, but the host has a wide variety of choices, both animals and humans. So no, I don't know the original.
We lost our caller, but I
Okay.
want to thank the caller for chiming in. Here's the thing. We have a lot of media attention to this, and we have been through the last 30 years. Look, I worked in television for a while, and we were told hype disease stories because people are interested in those, and that means you get higher ratings. We're seeing that going on right now, I think, in a lot of media. People are probably, in some cases, saying, well, here we go again. Should we be saying here we go again, or should we be concerned?
Well, from what I see in the pattern of, and there's no real pattern other than people bringing this home, we're seeing a smattering all over the U.S., not in Idaho or Montana, or I'm not aware of any in Nevada yet, but these are people that are coming home from places that they caught the virus. And our mosquitoes, for the most part in the U.S., are dormant. So the risk of passing it right now is mainly sexually transmitted, which is really uncommon. In fact, I think they have two documented, actual transmissions that way. So although I'd be cautious with that, it's still a pretty low probability. So the real worry is somebody comes home, I'll use Twin Falls. Somebody comes home from Panama and or somewhere in the Caribbean or South America, and they are infected. And when our mosquitoes are doing well in June, they bite that person, and then they bite somebody else, and now all of a sudden we have two hosts for that week at least that the mosquitoes can get a hold of and start spreading it. So I think we're going to see at-home virus spreading this summer. The question is will we do enough to keep the mosquito population down? And will we do what we need to stop the transmission by somebody who's got it using mosquito repellent? Isn't that funny? You've already got it. You should be the one using the mosquito repellent so you don't pass it on to others. So I do think it can be controlled. The U.S. has great resources. So for that reason, I don't think this should be hysteria, but being aware of what's going on. Just this morning, they're announcing that they're trying to come up with a vaccine, but it's at least 18 months away.
That kind of connects with the last caller's question because we don't know enough about it yet to really come up with that vaccine.
We do know the family of viruses that the Zika virus comes from, so it's not like it's a brand new idea, but no vaccine has been developed and put forward to that because for a vaccine to be used, it has to go through lots of scrutiny. You know, if it's the U.S., it's a very high scrutiny through the FDA, but even World Health Organization isn't going to throw out a vaccine that, willy-nilly will potentially cause more trouble than help.
We have a huge number of people here in this community who do mission work in Central and South America. And what should they know, and what should a family know before they send a child off?
Well, number one, don't let anybody get pregnant. Make sure you're taking extra measures to avoid that because that's your bigger risk. Number two is if you were going camping in the mountains, you'd probably take mosquito repellent. Do that and just be more conscious that you're almost religious about it while you're gone. Um, and then if you have any symptoms, of the fever, the rash, the pink eye, the body aches, take extra precaution that you're not the host that passes it to everybody else. In fact, I really think, and this is not a CDC guideline, this is Dr. Tripp. I really think if you come home from a vacation or a mission, it would be reasonable to use bug spray, mosquito repellent for the next week to 2 weeks, so that you are not the potential transmitter. So it sounds a little too easy. In fact, I've had thoughts of myself of doing a medical mission this summer, and it would be probably to Central or South America. And I've really thought, well, what's the risk to my family? And my belief is, unless I got that real scary paralysis, Guillain-Barré, other than the fever and the rash and whatnot, I don't think there's as big a risk. So I really don't believe this is time for hysteria. On the other hand, it would be spread real easily if somebody goes down, brings it back, and doesn't even, pay attention or isn't aware they have it. So your own family members could be the next ones to receive it.
Got about 2 minutes to go. There was a doctor I told you during the break, teaching at a medical college in Spain, who said, well, we should just abort everyone's babies for the next 3 years or 2 years till we get through this period. That itself seems to me like it's a little heavy-handed and it feeds into a lot of conspiracy theories.
Yeah, no, I don't think those kind of recommendations will go very far. I think he probably got on the news because it was so dramatic of a statement. It was dramatic for the country of El Salvador to say don't have any babies till 2018. But yeah, to go so far as to say let's do a lot of abortions, that doesn't make sense because although the microcephaly is a risk, they're really finding it at a very, very low percentage of those that are infected with the Zika virus. So it's not 1 out of 5 or 1 out of 10. It's even lower than
I heard
that.
4% in Brazil as a possibility, maybe 4%.
Well, and I don't know that number yet. I know it's a very low percentage. I would think it's even lower.
I think it was 4% of all the microcephaly births they thought might be attributed to the Zika virus.
Yeah, and when you consider microcephaly is an extremely rare condition, if you take 4% of those, it's a very few number, but it's a big enough number to really pay a lot of attention to. And that's why the World Health Organization and the CDC has taken this to what they call a level 1 effort. So the CDC is basically around the clock working on this right now.
How do people get a hold of Dr. Tripp or the office if they've got any more questions?
All right. Especially if you want to take me with you on your vacation, we can call. The office phone number is 933-4400, 933-4400, and you can reach us on our website, trippfamilymedicine.com, as well as at Facebook, which is Tripp Family Medicine as well. And I just got to tell you, we had an incredible experience singing at the Canyon Ridge High School basketball game this last Wednesday as an office staff. We sang the national anthem and had probably well over 200 kids that were there because they had fulfilled their job as a reader. It was called Read Like a Riverhawk program that we supported this year, so to promote reading among elementary age kids.
Is there a YouTube video of this?
Not yet, but I bet it's coming. Yeah.
Somebody with a camera somewhere in the crowd.
It was recorded, so it's probably coming.
All right. We'll see Dr. Tripp or one of his associates coming up next Wednesday morning between 8:30 and 9 o'clock right here on News Radio 1310 KLIX and newsradio1310.com. Bill Colley with you as well on Top Story this morning. One more hour ahead. Going to share with you the voice of Abraham Lincoln. No, it was never taped, but I'm going to tell you why it might be the closest approximation of what Lincoln sounded like coming up in the next hour of the program right here on KLIX.